Hey everybody, this is GGB. We're going to go over what happened yesterday in college basketball and what is going on today. Let's get straight into it. Yesterday we had two ranked teams, actually three ranked teams technically playing. Drake at number 25, and it definitely looks like the only team that's going to give them quite a run for their money in the Missouri Valley Conference is going to be Loyola Chicago. We're going to see that later on in the year. I'm really excited for that game in the playoffs or not. It's going to be interesting. They don't play each other. They play each other once in the regular season on February 14th, which is going to be a very interesting game to watch. I think Loyola Chicago, from what I've seen of Drake, is the only team that can give them a run for their money. But even then, it's going to be interesting because I think they have a very good team. Big 12 basketball. Last night, Texas Tech was able to upset Oklahoma, giving me 1.5 points, but also putting Texas Tech in the 5 spot for the moment, right? Kansas plays tonight and has a chance to retake that spot, but with a loss, will cement themselves at the 6th spot. And with an Oklahoma State win, they can pass them. So, interesting chain of events that can happen today. But let's go over what is going to happen today. The games that we will be seeing. Let's start in the Big Ten Conference, shall we? We have some pretty major games going on in the Big Ten Conference. We have number 24 Purdue traveling to Maryland. We have Michigan State traveling to number 8 Iowa. We have Penn State, a team that's been red hot, traveling to number 19 Wisconsin. And we have at 8 o'clock number 12 Illinois traveling to Indiana. So 4 huge matchups. Let's go over what happens with each one with a win. So Purdue is playing Maryland. Maryland right now is in desperate need of a win, right? They just haven't had a quality win in a long time. The last team Maryland won against was against Minnesota, which actually, never mind, I take that back. That's a quality win to have on your resume, even though Minnesota is no longer ranked. Minnesota's likely playoff caliber team, but you have a chance to. They're going to go down a stretch that's going to be extremely difficult for Maryland. You have a number 24 Maryland, then you travel to Penn State, who's on fire lately. That's the difficult one, right? If you beat Penn State, you're not going to get any real notoriety for it, but also it's going to be a tough team to beat. That really sucks for Maryland that it worked out that way, that they're playing Penn State at this time. Then they travel to number 7 Ohio State comes to them on Monday. So tough sequence of events. Now, the real question is, what happens with a win and a loss for each team? So Purdue with a win can move to 8-4, right? 8-4 puts them all the way up to 4th in the Big Ten, right? With a loss, they really cement themselves for the moment in the 6th spot. So they can get all the way up to 4, but they can also stay at 6, which really would suck for them. They could pass Iowa and Wisconsin, which I don't know how many Purdue fans really thought they were going to be better than Iowa and Wisconsin this year. Purdue's having an amazing year. I was surprised they weren't ranked last week. They're ranked this week, and it really does make sense. They're a very good basketball team. Now, Maryland with a loss falls to 3-8, but that would keep them ahead of a team like Maryland. I mean, Maryland ahead of a team like Maryland. Maryland ahead of a team like Northwestern. So, what happens with the other games? So, we have, again, Michigan State traveling to number 8 Iowa, right? So, Iowa with a win can move themselves to 7-3, a 13-4 record, and get themselves back in the 2nd place in the Big Ten. Now, with a loss for Michigan State, they fall to 2-8, stay in the 13th spot, which really I don't want to be at. Ideally, if you are going to have to play first day, right, and you really want to make the playoffs, you want to be the 11th seed. And I'll tell you why. Because you get to play Nebraska. There is not a huge difference between Maryland, Northwestern, and Michigan State, and honestly, any of them can win, right? There's a huge difference. That's why Maryland right now is not sitting in a horrible spot if you're going to have to go on a run in your conference tournament, right? Kind of want to not be in 12 or 13, because if you're 11, you get to sleepwalk through Nebraska, which is, it's not nice to say things like that about Nebraska, but it's kind of true. Nebraska is just not a good basketball team. Northwestern and Michigan State can beat anyone any given weekend. I think that. I do believe that. But it's going to be interesting. So, what happens if Michigan State wins? They move to 3-6, and it is possible if with a Penn State loss to Wisconsin, they can move up all the way to the 10th spot with a win. So that's very impressive for a team that's right now slated to be in 13th place. But if you're a Michigan State fan, you're rooting against Penn State today. And obviously rooting for yourself. With a loss, Iowa falls to 6-4 and falls from the 4 spot down 2 spots to 6, right? So, but that's if Purdue wins. So, like, let's say Iowa loses, but Purdue also loses, they would only drop to 5. And if, let's say, Wisconsin loses to Penn State as well, Iowa would not move. They'd fall to 6-4, but Wisconsin would be 7-5, and so would Purdue. So, the top teams are all playing today. Illinois, in fact, is playing, so literally anyone can move up. Like, let's say Purdue moves to 8-4. I guess the best they can do really is hope that Illinois loses, right? And then you can move up to the 3 spot. Ohio State would automatically move into the 2 spot considering they're not playing today. But a lot of different crazy stuff can happen today. If Illinois loses, if Penn State beats Wisconsin, again, Wisconsin would fall unless Purdue was to also lose. Penn State can't really move up a whole lot. They can tie Minnesota in their conference record with a 4-6 record, which I don't think a lot of people thought Penn State was going to be able to do this year. The main thing Penn State's playing for is not moving down, because moving down stinks. Especially the progress that Penn State has made over the past few weeks. They definitely have a big game against Wisconsin tonight. They should be able to go through the rest of their the 3-game stretch in which they play Michigan State, Maryland, and Nebraska with relative ease. So, I mean, this is kind of a must-win game. You win this game, you're likely looking at 7-6 after next week. So it's just going to be a pretty good record considering the strength of the Big Ten this year. So a lot of stuff can happen today. If Indiana was to beat Illinois, they move to 5-5. Same spot as Rutgers, except for Rutgers played 2 more games than they have, so they are still in front. Illinois could fall. A lot of bad stuff can happen. Interesting stuff can happen in the Big Ten today. SEC basketball, there's one big game. Tennessee is playing Ole Miss, traveling to Ole Miss. Actually, Tennessee is favored by 3.5 points in this game, but it's going to be interesting. Ole Miss hasn't actually, they've been playing pretty badly. I want to say good things about Ole Miss, but they really have not been playing good. And Tennessee seemed to get their groove together last week. After the week they had before, where they lost to Florida and then to Missouri, a team they just demolished when they were at home, Missouri was able to destroy them at the Missouri Stadium, but then they got it together. They skied by Mississippi State, but then was able to upset Kansas in the SEC Big 12. I don't remember what it's called, challenge or whatever. So what happens with a win and a loss for each team? Let's say Tennessee wins. Tennessee wins, they move to 13-3, 6-3 overall. They would automatically go into second place in the SEC, right? Ole Miss would fall to 3-7, which is, I want to say, a worse record than 2-4, which is South Carolina's record. I think they fall 1 spot behind South Carolina, and I don't believe they fall past Texas A&M quite yet, but I do believe South Carolina passes them. So, what happens with a win for Ole Miss? They move to 4-6 and is able to pass Georgia, and they are able to move into 10th place. So they can't pass Mississippi State quite yet. They have a 4-6 record instead of Mississippi State's 4-5 record, so that would keep them behind a little bit. But they're definitely they would be getting pretty close to Auburn and Mississippi State, and Kentucky for that matter, which is weird. I never thought I'd mention Ole Miss and Kentucky in the same sentence, but it can. I think it's likely that Ole Miss ends up passing Kentucky at one point. So what would happen with a loss for Tennessee? Tennessee would fall to 5-4 and would drop, boom, 1 spot behind Missouri, which I think Missouri is arguably a better team than Tennessee is right now. So it's going to be interesting. I honestly don't think, I think if I'm going to be talking about teams, I think Tennessee's probably going to get it together. And teams that I think, SEC teams that I think are dangerous in the tournament, it's Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Missouri. Arkansas might be a little bit of an underdog. I don't think that much of LSU. LSU proved they don't really have the closing capacity like they need to. Big 12. We have one pretty big Big 12 game, actually 2 pretty big Big 12 games today, which sounds repetitive, but West Virginia is traveling to Iowa State, and Kansas State is traveling to Kansas. With a win, Kansas can take back that 5 spot over Texas Tech with a 6-4 record. It'd be better than Texas Tech's 5-4 record, right? With a win for West Virginia, I don't know if a 5-3 record is necessarily better than a 6-4 record. I don't believe so. But I think West Virginia stays in the spot they are if they beat Iowa State today. Now, Iowa State with a win can take second to last place in the Big 12. Kansas State has not been trying to help themselves recently with actually picking up conference wins. Started out 1-0 with a win against Iowa State, weirdly enough, and they have not won a conference game since. So, interesting stuff can happen here in the bottom if Iowa State could pass Kansas State. But Kansas State with a win against Kansas moves them to 2-8. They can't move either. They can't move out of the spot, but it cements themselves in the second to last spot. And then with a win after that, again, I've been saying this for weeks now, though. I sound like a broken record. Two wins, they can pass TCU. But I don't know if that's quite going to happen with the way Kansas State's been playing basketball. But who does GGB think is going to be upset today? Actually, never mind. I forgot to mention an actually huge Big 12 game today. Baylor is playing Kansas. Baylor is playing Texas. Texas is probably, in my opinion, the second best team in the Big 12 right now. But Baylor's probably the best team in the Big 12. I keep saying Kansas, but I think it's because Kansas is normally the best team in the Big 12. Baylor is amazing this year. Obviously undefeated, 16-0. One of the few teams left, I think, is just Drake and Gonzaga at this point. So what would happen with a loss? As I said before, I don't think a 5-3 record is better than Oklahoma's 6-4 record, which means with a loss, even though Oklahoma lost yesterday, I think Texas falls. Texas would fall to 11-4, which I believe is better than a 12-5 record. I would double check, but I think Texas would fall to third place with a loss. Now with a win, Baylor would have lost their first game of the year, which obviously would suck for Baylor. But they only moved to 8-1 conference, stay in first place, but it would put Texas about a game out. So, very interesting chain of events. Who does GGB think the best chance of being upset today is? I am excited to announce, I think it's Penn State. I think Penn State's going to beat Wisconsin. I believe the spread is too large. I think it was like 7.5 points in favor of Wisconsin or something. I understand. There's that. I know Penn State beat them last time, but Wisconsin could beat them this time. It's interesting. But the way Penn State's playing the game, everyone's involved, and it's so interesting. Hara is turning into one of the better big men in the Big Ten, behind Luka Garza. He's playing phenomenal basketball. Wheeler's an absolute legend at getting steals, absolute person to be reckoned with on the defensive side of things. Brockington is a consistent scorer, and then you're going to have to watch out for Myron Jones' three-point shooting ability, and Lundy was off. If you told me Lundy was only going to score 2 points in that game, I would have said we lost. Easy. But we didn't. It's different person steps up every time. In my opinion, I don't think it's going to be Myron Jones. I think they're going to spend a lot of game film trying to figure out how to lock down Myron Jones. I think they're going to do it. But I think Brockington's going to be consistently great on the offensive side of things. And I expect Lundy to be back in form. Sessoms as well to come off the bench and give us more than 10 points. Anyways, this is GGB, no co-host Pepper saying adios amigos and go Nittany Lions.